This is the life-size model for the corpus. You can see here that it is getting close to being finished. I have on this piece a big challenge to actually create one of the most beautiful corpuses I could possibly create, and I believe that I'm achieving that. The general composition of the corpus, there are many different variations of how to depict the crucifixion. And the crucifixion, probably one of the most often sculpted subject matter in all of the history of Western artwork. And so I had a lot of reference to consider, and a lot of, basically more than 1,000 years of different interpretations of how people can possibly do a crucifixion. One of the interesting artists, Donatello, which was used as kind of one of the inspirations for me, is his crucifixion here. And you can see how there's many different ways to depict the Christ figure. Here the head is up and the arms are basically horizontal. On my piece though, I wanted to create the most graceful Christ figure and the most realistic Christ figure combined here. I've spent for hours and hours at this point, endless time with my model, who would be standing here as I would capture so much of the detail. And it's interesting when you're sculpting a piece like this that is so realistic, the muscles actually change as the figure breathes, as my actual model is breathing. So what I'm doing is I'm taking different elements from nature and creating a figure that captures a specific mood and feeling. You can see here that his hands are going up around a 45-degree. That shows off the torso at probably what I believe the best position possible. It shows off the body well. There's a sense of vulnerability within this piece, within the arms stretched out like this, with the muscles like the latissimus dorsi coming out a little bit. The whole figure is done with sinewy, muscular strength. We did not want to create a design of a wimpy, feminine-looking Christ. This Christ is muscular. He has power within his body. You can see here some of the sinews and veins that I'm starting to work on. This reinforces the idea that Christianity and Catholicism is a very, very strong religion. This is our emblem. This is a very, very important emblem. And to have this power depicted through the human form is an amazing opportunity and an amazing symbol for people that will catch it, I think, almost intuitively, the message that we're giving here. You can see here that the figure, though he's very muscular, is still lean. I did not want to create a muscle-bound caricature of a strong male. Very realistic and very proportioned. When I was working on this, not only was I thinking about Donatello, the great artist of the Renaissance, but also the ancient Greek sculptors that took the human form and made it as perfect as possible. I used my male model. I used my model standing around, holding this position for a long time. I've actually enhanced some specific areas. The rib cage here is prominent. The whole stress of the pose makes it realistic and makes it very, very impressionable that the figure is strained on a cross. There's that weight being pulled down as the muscles like the tricep and the bicep and deltoid tie-in is strained here and accentuated. Every little detail on this is anatomically correct and beautiful. You can see here, if you can close up here, I just want to bring your attention to this here. The muscle of the deltoid with the sinew there, with the bicep coming in, with a little lump there, within the tricep, is all anatomically correct. I realize that people want to see something that looks powerful and real. So my idea is to have every single muscle, every square inch of this, all of the forms taken almost as an independent sculpture to create this whole piece, almost like a mosaic of the human form here. One of the things that I'd like to draw your attention to here is also the hands and the veins. The forearms, the hands, the subtle gesture. There's strength over here, but then there's exhaustion depicted in both of the hands here, and which is a very nice contrast. The flow of the piece, with the veins accentuated, with the muscles going along this beautiful flowing line, with the hair and the drapery acting as points, and also the face, so I'll get to later, also acting points of contrast that reinforces the realism. Here with the hair shrouded down here, relatively long hair, the traditional crown that I'm actually working on, I'm going to have to put a lot of detail in that, adds a beautiful texture to the very, very detailed real body here. I'm not done the piece yet. Ideally, when it's done, it'll almost be that when a viewer takes a look at it, it'll almost be so lifelike that the figure itself will be breathing. You can see here the drapery that I have on here. There's many different ways to do the drapery on a corpus. This I want to have very, very Baroque, very alive and exciting. You can see here all the different striations, all the detail will be realistic to a certain degree, but then I'll add a little bit more volume within it to actually create a lot of life within it. You can see here that my model, this is my model Ed, not only did he pose for hours holding the drapery, but when he was exhausted, when it was at the point where he couldn't hold the pose anymore, I had digital photographs of all the different angles of the drapery so I can get it as perfect as possible. And you can see now that I'm in the middle of working these actual folds here. I love this part of the piece because it, again, by its absolute contrast to the smoothness of the torso is going to really add beauty within the piece here. There's a lot of different references out that I've studied in the past about how the actual real corpus would have been. And you can see here a book that I've carried in my studio, A Doctor at Calvary, examines the actual scientific positioning of what would happen with a man that's actually crucified. Usually what they say is that the figure would be hanged like this with the nails driven in specific areas. So the whole depiction is very, very realistic. The head being at a position like this, according to the scientific knowledge about how someone was crucified, could not really be turned over to the one side. It would have to fall generally forward here. You have to also realize, as I'm working on this piece, although I'm working on it life size, this is only a model for a larger piece. So when I'm working on the piece, I'm sensitive that the view of the piece will be from a lower angle when people approach the piece. The face. Let's talk about the face, because that is one of the most important aspects about this piece. But you're going to have to move the camera down as if you're a viewer actually looking up on the piece. There's the face. As you can see with the face, there's a seriousness, there is a nobility, there's emotion that has taken me about as much time as doing the rest of the sculpture to capture. Now, that face has about the same amount of strength as the body does. It is a face that is powerful. I used a couple models for it, but then I actually had to work on my own intuition about how I perceived Christ to actually look, in the sense of I'm using the face as a metaphor for the feeling about the whole corpus. You can see there that it's a strong brow on him. You can see that the beard, a traditional beard that has almost two parts to it. It's a separation in the center of it there. The lips, his mouth is subtly parted. This works well with the concept of his life force, the amount of detail that I've worked up on this piece here. The eyes, you can see, I'm working them that are relatively shut. The beautiful traditional hair that silhouettes the piece, it brings and lends it to a traditional depiction of the Christ with the long hair. I did not want to do a face on Christ that did not look powerful. I did not want to do a face of Christ that does not look beautiful. This is an extremely handsome man. And again, this art is almost the ambassador to our beliefs and our religion. And so to capture even the face in a quintessential, almost style of idyllic beauty and power makes the piece very, very acceptable and accessible to most people here. The nose is not 100% a classical nose in a sense, but it does work well within the piece. The eyes, you can see, are a little bit deep in, and that gives some concentration to the corpus. It gives some suffering. It gives some struggle that's represented there. It's a face that is ambiguous enough, I think, to have many different interpretations too. It's open to interpretation. Ideally, people come up to it and read in some of their own personal struggles. And that's because it's an ideal face in a sense. It's easy to put yourself within that. It's not done yet though, I have to tell you. There's so much more detail, but it's going quite well at this stage. I have hours and hours and hours to work on this piece. And I've done many different corpuses in my life. I've been doing corpuses for more than 17 years, and considering that, like I mentioned before, it's the crucifixion is probably one of the most sculpted subjects in all of the whole history of Western artwork. When I took on this challenge, I thought I would really have to, because of this history, do my best to transgress everything that has gotten up to this point, not only in my own career, but also in the broader sense of Catholicism and its history. It's not done yet, but it's going well.